Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in the story are over 18 years old. It was a regular weekday dinner. I didn't have much of an appetite, but my two sons were eating macaroni and cheese with gusto. Jason, 15, and Josh, 14, never forgot to wash their plates. They were both actively involved in sports and other typical teenage activities. At the far end of the table, my wife Carla was watching the family dinner, making sure everyone had enough of everything they wanted. It looked like a painting Norman Rockwell would have loved to paint. The guys finished quickly and went to play street hockey before it got dark. I was finishing the rest of my iced tea, trying to gather my courage and tell my wife. She was standing at the sink washing the dishes when I got up from my chair. Next time you go to meet your lover, don't wear that red dress. You look like a $20 call girl walking into that motel room. She didn't even turn around. And as I was walking out the door, I heard a porcelain plate clatter to the floor. I spent the next 2 hours mowing the grass. Eventually, it got too dark to see anything, and I had to stop. I didn't want to go into the house. I didn't want to make eye contact with her. Cleaning the lawn mower took me longer than usual. There was half a liter less oil in the jar, so I took care of it. When I went to throw the empty oil container in the trash, I noticed a brown paper bag tightly crumpled and stuffed into the bottom of the tank. Inside was a red dress and a set of red underwear. The panties were stained, but I had no reason to check them. I already knew who did the dirty work. Carla was lying in bed with the door closed. That was fine, because I didn't want to make eye contact with her. The whole day didn't start the way it should. I had a feeling that Carla had been cheating on me for several months. Since I didn't want it to be like that, I tried to ignore it, hoping it would pass. But it didn't go away. It only got worse. My wife is a fourth-grade school teacher. She usually goes to school with the boys. She had a doctor's appointment this morning and wanted to have her eyes examined, so she took a sick leave. I'm leaving around the same time. I'm a house painter. For the past few weeks, I've been working at an apartment complex in Harrisburg, about an hour's drive from home. When Carla announced she was going on sick leave, I decided to do the same quietly. I've been painting houses for almost 20 years. I like this job, and I'm good at it. I was doing this when we got married, and it helped Carla graduate from college. I always thought that my wife approved of my choice of job, but in the last few years I've noticed that she makes comments indicating that this is not the case. When she introduced me to her friends, she never mentioned what I do for a living. In fact, she seemed to be trying her best to avoid it. If someone insisted on it, it would come out, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. Everything was fine when I was paying for her college tuition and renting a house for us to raise the boys, but now I felt like a burden to her. I hated going to social events. Carla was a good teacher. She earned more than I did and received more benefits. The medical benefits paid to her by the union covered the expenses of the whole family. She also had a decent pension. All I had was Social Security. She kept herself in good shape. Despite the fact that she was only 150 centimeters tall, she made an impression. I think it was all about her platinum hair, which she cut very short. I was hanging around the street, waiting for her to leave. When she came out, she was wearing a pretty red dress. She looked good in that dress, and I always told her that. However, it was a strange choice to go to the doctor. The doctor did not have an office at the Desca Motel. Carla parked the car and went straight to number 117, knocked twice, and entered. That was all I needed to see to confirm my suspicions. The young desk clerk was more than happy to give me a registration card in exchange for a $100 bill. I recognized the name, but I couldn't remember his face. Jefferson Gibbons attended several events that Carla dragged me to. He had something to do with the school board or the school district. I couldn't remember which one. Jefferson drove a BMW and left it unlocked. It only took me a minute to get his documents out of the glove compartment. The car was registered to Jefferson and Darlene Gibbons. They lived at 321 David Drive in Lancaster. This alerted me. I remembered that he was a member of the Lancaster County School Board. It also turned out that he was married. It was the highlight of my day. I wandered around the city for several hours before heading home. Carla was there when I arrived and was as cheerful as ever. She was no longer wearing a red dress. I didn't spend the night at home that night. I was sleeping in a truck behind the warehouse of the company I subcontracted with. I was still sweaty from the late mowing, but I didn't care. I really wanted to drink coffee, and eggs and toast went well with it. I was trying to kill time before heading home. I wanted to make sure Carla was gone. There was nothing in the house that I was attached to. I gathered up all my clothes and stuffed them into trash bags. I took out several documents that, in my opinion, I should have had: a birth certificate, a passport, and the like. I made a quick phone call. Darlene Gibbons? Yes. This is Bob Terrell. We've met at several school events over the past few years. I can't say that I remember. What do you want? I just wanted to inform you that your husband Jefferson spent yesterday afternoon at the Desca Motel in Reading with my wife Carla. There was silence on the other end of the line. I waited for an answer, but it didn't come. That's all I wanted to say, Mrs. Gibbons. I'm sorry to bother you with this, but I couldn't leave it as it is. Goodbye. 10 minutes later, I was on my way to Colorado to see my Uncle Jack. I didn't want to leave the boys, but they were quite cheerful, and Carla could provide for them better than I could. She earned more than I did and was a better parent, except when it came to adultery. I didn't leave a note or anything like that. I'm sure she would have understood what was going on when she saw that my clothes were gone. The boys graduated from school at 3 p.m., so about 10 minutes after that, I called Jason. He had a cell phone that allowed incoming calls, but could only dial a few preset numbers. It seemed to us that it worked. Jason. Hi, it's Dad. Are you coming home already? Yes. How are you? I just wanted to warn you. I moved out of the house today. I'm heading to Colorado to stay with Uncle Jack for a while. I felt I had to let you and Josh know what was going on. What the hell are you talking about? Why did you move out? Jason, the easiest and most pleasant way for me to answer this question is to advise you to ask your mother. As far as I understand, this would be an excuse on my part. Your mother decided she wanted to switch. I think she was looking for someone with a better job or position. I'm not sure. Anyway, it turned out that I wasn't good enough for her anymore. I'm going to leave for a while, so she can decide what she wants to do. I'll call you as often as I can. If I remember correctly, Uncle Jack doesn't pick up cell phone signals. Come on, Dad. Could you please sort this out here? Is there no counseling or something like that? It's not for me, son. Look, your mom has a good job, and it won't be hard for her to take care of you guys. I'll try to call you sometime this weekend. Oh, and don't tell your mother where I am or that I called you. Take care of Josh and try to stay calm. Wow. Bye. I just moved into the wonderful state of Illinois. Uncle Jack lived north of Raton Pass. It was more like New Mexico than Colorado. I do not know what he did for a living or where he got the money, but he did not seem to have any problems. He was married many years ago, but caught his wife cheating and kicked her out. When I explained my problem to him, he was understanding. I was invited to stay with him as long as I wanted. He was glad of my company. Jack had a lot of land, but it didn't look like it was suitable for anything special. It was too rugged for farming and too sparse for ranching. In addition to the main house, there were several barns and cattle pens. He had a lot of horses, which I found out about later, and they were all riding. People came for weekends and went horseback riding, usually only in the summer. The rest of the year was not very pleasant. On Sunday afternoon, we drove to Trinidad to have dinner and pick up some of the necessities that I forgot to bring with me. I managed to get a signal on my phone, and I called Jason. Son, I just wanted to let you know that I got there okay. How are you? It's not good, Dad. I explained everything to Josh, and he's very angry with Mom. He's not talking to her. Mom doesn't want to tell us what happened. She claims she doesn't know why you left. I tried to get her to say something a couple of times, but she just shut up. Josh, and I try to leave her alone as much as possible. You seem to be doing a pretty good job of it. I apologize for the mess. Do your best. I can't get a signal at the ranch, but Jack has a regular phone. I'll try to call from there. Is there anything I can do to help you guys? We're going to be fine, Dad. There was an interesting feature about Jack's house. Every building was in desperate need of painting. I do not know how long he lived there, but I'm willing to bet that there was not a single brush on the whole ranch. At least I felt that I could earn something for my living. There was a cooperative nearby, and I bought from them all the 25-liter cans of red oxide paint that they had. Of course, it all went to Jack's account. There were still a few months of good weather left, and I hoped to finish most of the extensions. The main house will have to wait until spring. I couldn't reach Jason on his cell phone for the next 2 weekends. I started to worry. 2 more weeks passed, and there was no news from the boys. It's been over a month now. I thought I had given Jason Jack's landline number, but but now I wasn't sure. It's been more than a month since they haven't been in touch when they call me on my home phone. Dad, this is Jason. Josh and I are in Santa Fe, and we need to be picked up. Can you pick us up? What the hell are you doing in Santa Fe? How did you get there? I can't talk right now. I borrowed a guy's cell phone and promised not to delay the conversation. We are in the Sky Blue terminal. How soon can you come here? At least in a couple of hours. Go get something to eat? We're leaving right now. 2 hours later, the boys were already in the back seat of the car, and we were heading back north. They had no luggage. Josh fell asleep immediately. I've tried to call you several times, Jason. What happened to your phone? Mom found out you were calling. She got angry, took my phone away from me, and smashed it with a rolling pin. I was going to call the home number you gave me, but I decided to wait. I don't know why. I guess I was hoping that things would get better. Since you're here, I guess it didn't get any better. About a month ago, Mom started leaving the house at night. She didn't come home until after midnight and was always drunk. Sometimes she didn't even get up and go to work. She didn't even bother to call or anything like that. Was she alone? Yes, at first. One evening, about a week later, she brought a boyfriend to her house. They were both on edge. They went straight to Mom's room and started making noise. You know what I mean, right? I know what you mean. What else happened? About an hour later, Josh and I went outside and let the air out of the tires of his car. We crossed the street to Mr. Simpson, and he let us spend the night in his guest room. Mr. Simpson and we were watching the guy when he came out the next morning. He was furious. It took a specialist from the workshop more than an hour to get there and fix all the tires. Mom stood on the porch in her bathrobe for a while. We went straight to school. When we got home that day, Mom didn't tell us anything about it. Has this happened often? Just one more time. The next night, she brought another guy home, and we did the same thing, only this time we cut the valve rods. He had to be towed. He was very angry. Mr. Simpson enjoyed it immensely. Since then, she has never had any other guys in her house. Well, it looks like you guys did it. She went out thinking all the time, and usually didn't come back until the next morning. Sometimes she'd drive home, and sometimes the guys would just give her a ride. I do not know where she left her car. Oh yeah, one really weird thing that I almost forgot about. She bought 5 or 6 red dresses and wore one of them every time she went outside. At least Josh and I could sleep and eat at home. We've had a lot of calls from the school and the school district asking where she is. She slept most of the time. She was kind of fired a couple of days ago. There were some union restrictions that forbade them to do this, but they no longer allowed her to go to work. I'm really not sure if all this happened. I'm sorry about all this. If I had known this was going to happen, I would never have left you there. So, how did you end up here? Last night, around midnight, some guy drove her home and kicked her out of his car. She got up, hobbled to the porch, and fell. We didn't know if she was dead or not. Her dress was torn, and she looked terrible. That's when I decided it was time for us to leave. I told Josh to call 911 and took her Visa card out of her wallet. I went to my computer and booked a flight from Philadelphia to Santa Fe and left the tickets at the ticket counter. Although I wasn't sure if they would give tickets to a couple of kids. I almost bought tickets to Denver, but changed my mind at the last minute. It looks like everything went well. We had to work a little harder. What do you mean? An ambulance arrived, and one of the guys called the police as soon as he saw Mom. They asked if there was anyone else at home. The police arrived there when Mom was being loaded into an ambulance. It turned out to be a mixture of alcohol and substances. I didn't know what Mom was using. I didn't know either, son. They asked a lot of questions, especially about the car that dropped her off, but we didn't know much. Sometime later, a policewoman came up to us. She was from Family Services and asked where you were. I told her that you were in Colorado and that you had sent us the tickets. With the saddest expression on my face, I told her that we had no way to get to the airport and we needed an adult to board. She made several phone calls and eventually took us to the cash register. I think it was an easy way out for her, but it went great for us. After the boys settled in, Jack and I sat up until midnight discussing the situation. I thought Carla would start the divorce process after I left, but it seems I was wrong. Of course, I never thought that she would turn into a notorious fool. I think she had a lot of unfulfilled desires, and she was glad to be able to express herself. I'm not very good at understanding why other people do this. Jack didn't have a computer, so the next morning I had to use his phone. Eventually, I found a lawyer in Reading who was more than willing to prepare the divorce papers for me. When I mentioned Carla's name, he made it clear that he knew about her problem. I think these guys are aware of what's going on at the police station. He said that her actions over the past few weeks would be easy to document, which would greatly simplify the divorce process. I had to send the lawyer a money transfer for $2,000. It knocked me out of my rut, but Uncle Jack promised to support me financially if necessary. The lawyer decided that he would try to get Carla to pay child support, since she earned more than me. Of course, since she was out of work, it would complicate the situation. I had to contact the school where the boys studied, and they were sympathetic without any problems. I think everyone who worked in the school system was aware of the adventures of my loving wife. They had no problem agreeing to send all school documents and even copies of birth certificates. I told the guys that they can rest for a while until the documents arrive. Everything went well for the next few months. Carla signed the divorce papers, but without child support. She lost her teaching diploma and was forced to look for another job. I do not know what she got in the end, but I am sure that it was not as prestigious as her teaching position. All I had to do was wait another 3 months. Jason and Josh both did well at their new school. They enjoyed going to the bus stop every morning. Jack and I refused to give them a ride. We told them it was a character development exercise. A little sunlight should penetrate into every life. I think I've embellished this statement a bit. I want to say that sooner or later something good will happen to all of us. It happened to me in the last week of May. Jack assigned me to deliver 2 horses to a guy in Cloudcroft, about 5 hours away. I left very early, hoping to return the same day. That part of my plan didn't work out too well. I had no problems with the delivery of the cargo. I've never liked towing an empty trailer, but it was necessary. I was about 10 minutes away from Alamogordo when I came across a roadblock. A truck full of illegal immigrants overturned, and all law enforcement and Border Patrol officers were combing the area. They stopped and inspected all vehicles, especially trailers and trucks. I never found out what happened, but by the time I passed the check, I had to urinate like a mule. After about a mile, I stopped at a billboard and finally felt relieved. The big problem was that I had an audience. I went back to the truck and took 2 bottles of water out of the refrigerator. The older of the 2 girls grabbed them and handed one to a little girl about 4 years old. The eldest was in her late 20s. They were dirty, tired, thirsty, and hungry. I could see that they were scared, so I didn't say anything. The eldest had long dark hair with thick eyebrows, dark eyes, and a golden complexion. The younger one was an exact replica, only smaller. I turned to the truck and waved them to follow me. I knew it was illegal, but I didn't care. They hesitated a bit, but carefully made their way to the passenger door. The eldest of them did not take her eyes off me. We drove for about an hour until I needed gas. Before filling the tank, I pointed to the toilet at the side of the station. They managed to get into and out of the ladies' room before I filled the tank. When I paid the bill, I took a couple of ready-made sandwiches and 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. I was right. They were as hungry as they were thirsty. There was a Walmart supermarket in Las Vegas, New Mexico. I decided to stop there before taking the highway to the pass. 2 of my guests stayed close as I approached the greeter. A few minutes later, I had an assistant in the store, an elderly lady who spoke Mexican. It would probably be more correct to say that she spoke Spanish, but as far as I understand, there is a difference. I quickly explained what I needed, and we went straight to the children's department. 15 minutes later, we had a great collection of underwear, pants, shirts, and socks for the smallest. The older girl, or better to say, the woman, took a little longer. I tried to stay away from the younger one while they were choosing panties, bras, and casual clothes for her. Then we went into the shoe department and bought comfortable sneakers for both of them. The last stop was the beauty and health department, where we bought toothbrushes, combs, and some women's supplies. She seemed embarrassed by the latest purchase, but she took them anyway. I thanked the saleswoman from Walmart who helped with the shopping. She smiled and hugged me. I don't think this is a standard procedure. The bill was still less than $200, so I was happy. I decided to stay the night. It was a busy day, and I thought the ladies could use a warm shower and a soft bed. I rented a room with 2 beds. We laid out all their new clothes on the bed, and before leaving, I pointed them to the shower. I called Jack, and he advised me not to rush back. I didn't tell him about my passengers. He'll find out about it in the morning. I don't know if he needed a cook and a housekeeper, but he was going to hire them anyway. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. After about an hour, I decided it was time to go back. I ordered a full meal for 3. When I returned to the room, they were clean and shiny. The smile I got in response to that little remark was worth all the money I gave to Sam Walton. "Myra," she said, pointing at herself. She smiled again and pointed at the little girl. "Patina." She pointed at me and said, "Bob." God, it was like a comic version of an old Tarzan movie. I couldn't help laughing, and a second later the 3 of us were eating this dish. The chicken and side dishes disappeared in a hurry. By this time, I was as hungry as they were. Naturally, we had nothing to talk about. After we finished eating, I pointed to one of the beds and lay down on the other. I wanted to take a shower, but decided not to. I slept on top of the bedspread with my clothes on. Myra seemed to like it. He and Patina were sleeping in their new clothes. I was afraid to go to a restaurant, so the next day I ate a couple of McMuffins from the diner for breakfast. We returned to the ranch before noon. Well, Jack decided that it was nothing. There were many rooms in the ranch house, so there was no problem with Myra and Patina's accommodation. Jack spoke a little Spanish and quickly found out that Patina was Myra's daughter and that her husband had died. She was trying to reach her brother, who worked as a bricklayer in Alabama. When the truck overturned, most of the people stayed there. Myra decided that it was better to try to escape from the scene of the accident. I think it turned out to be the right decision on her part. Jack cooked dinner for all of us and told Myra that from now on she would have to cook for herself. She seemed to like it, and so did I. Jack wasn't a very good cook. When the boys returned home from school, they seemed happy to see Myra. They were very pleased with the dinner she had prepared for us. I didn't know what kind of dish it was, but it was delicious. She gave Jack a list of the groceries she needed for the kitchen. He was in Spanish, but in Trinidad there would be no problem with that. It looks like I'm going to have to learn some Spanish while I teach her English. I could teach her the words, but her grammar would be as bad as mine. Myra quickly got used to the routine. She did the laundry, cleaned, cooked, and ran the household. Jack was glad he didn't have to do it. In addition, she quickly mastered English. Now I know where the expression Spanglish came from. Using a little bit of both, she learned to express her thoughts quite well. Because Patina spent a lot of time with boys and TV, she learned much faster than her mother. Sometimes she had to explain things to Myra. Her mother really thought it was convenient. Patina was supposed to go to school next year, so we were glad to see that she was doing well. My divorce from Carla is finally over. A couple of days later, she sent several boxes of clothes for the boy and other things, including the original birth certificates. There was nothing of mine in the boxes. There was no note, no letter, or anything like that. I was curious about what she was doing, but not enough to ask any questions. Myra asked Jack why I was so happy. He told her this in Spanish, and she left the room with a big smile on her face. I think it was a good sign. Since Myra had her brother's address and cell phone number, she was able to call him. He was sorry he couldn't see her, but he was glad she was okay. The call seemed to help her make ends meet. The boys became experts in handling horses. After everything was painted, we spent a lot of time putting the house in order. We did things that Jack never had time for. Instead of just being a squalid old cowboy ranch, this place has become more like a resort. Several people who kept their horses at Jack's asked if they could stay at the ranch instead of at a downtown motel. We had a lot of rooms available, and Myra thought it would be nice if she could participate in this. She said it with a little laugh, but Jack actually thought it was a good idea. The price included dinner and breakfast with ranch hands, as well as a room. Jack had to get a license and install fire appliances, but a month later Myra had her own bed and breakfast. A few weeks after that, a small article about the ranch appeared in the Santa Fe newspaper, and before you know it, Lazy Jack became a popular tourist attraction. Jack had to buy horses so that the tourists would have something to ride. He also needed to buy a computer, which the guys installed as soon as possible. Thank God that there is a computer service for direct television and satellite communications. Over the winter, things went down a bit. Jack added 4 more rooms to the house. Myra bought a new Viking oven, and Jason got a training permit. I spent a lot of time painting, sanding, coloring, and just getting to work. I was glad that Jack and the boys had done most of the work with the horses. In the evenings, the boys worked on the ranch's website. Josh had already booked a table for next spring, and was also teaching Patina to read. We had to open accounts with all credit card companies. We were so busy during the slow season that we started to worry about the coming year. Whenever possible, Myra sat with me. We didn't talk much, but it was always nice when she was around. She made sure that I always had coffee or whatever else I was drinking at the time. We began to communicate better, but I was a slow learner and also a little slow in communication. Jason tried several times to push me to be more friendly with Myra, but I couldn't do anything. It was just before Christmas when she saved me the choice. Bob, I think it's time for Patina to have her own bed in her own room. Do you agree? I think so. Yes. It's a good idea. We should have done this sooner. Good. I'm glad you look at it that way. I'm going to move my things to your room today, but I need a chest of drawers. Could you move the second chest of drawers from Patina's room to your room? It's too heavy for me to move it. Of course. I can move it for you. Myra, I don't want to offend you, but there's only one bed in my room. It's all right. Don't worry. I don't take up much space. I was amazed at how well she speaks English. I thought maybe some part of this conversation was planned in advance. I suspected my friendly host or my treacherous sons. Anyway, she made her point, and I was flattered. I was very careful and didn't do anything to offend her. In no way did I want her to believe that I would take advantage of her or her situation. I think she figured it out for herself. I would love to impress you with how wonderful I have been courting Myra and persuading her to become mine, but I can't. I think I fell in love with her from the first day I saw her, but I couldn't bring myself to admit it either to her or to myself. It was a relief to me to know that she felt the same way and found the courage to do what I couldn't. We got married on Christmas Day. There was only family and a few local friends. The following year was a wonderful one for Lazy Jack. We had a lot of orders, and we had to give up some of them. Myra hired a young girl to help in the kitchen, and Jason showed interest in her. I think that's a good sign. Unfortunately, Jack passed away at the end of the summer. He left everything to Myra and me, not only the ranch, but also the mining rights worth over $1 million. The boys were doing great, and Patina was growing like a weed. Life was wonderful. The epilogue. When Carla left the Palmer Confectionery Factory, it was cold and damp. She worked a shift from midnight to 8, gluing the eyes of chocolate Easter bunnies. She had a large bag in one hand and a pay envelope in the other as she walked into a local diner for breakfast. For the 100th time, she pulled a tattered issue of People magazine out of her bag, and it automatically opened to page 48. She was stirring cream in her coffee, looking at a photo of her youngest son Josh helping Julia Roberts mount Palomino's horse. On the next page, Lazy Jack rancher Bob Terrell and his wife Myra stood on the porch of their beautiful ranch house with Cameron Diaz. Before finishing her meal, she would read the entire article, as she did every week. Putting down the magazine, she checked to see if she had enough money. Charity shops were due to open in 20 minutes. Maybe this week will be a good one. Although Carla had 16 red dresses, she always needed one more. There are always not enough red dresses. N.